Hello again, and welcome to I've Got a Beatles podcast with Dave and Chris. And today we're going to do another installment in our series, Beatle Friends. But this one's also kind of a tribute to someone Chris knows very well as Brian Frederick Arthur Hines, otherwise known as Denny Laine. So, yeah, Denny Laine, best known for his work in Wings, was born October 29th, 1944, and died at the end of last year, December 5th, 2023, at the age of 79 in Naples, Florida, not far from where I used to live. And yeah, so we're going to take the opportunity today to give you an overview of Denny Laine's life and works and focus particularly on, obviously, for the subject of this podcast, his work with Paul McCartney and Wings. So,
Yeah.
Chris, you can get us started. You did a lot of work this week, really
A,
digging into Denny's life and works.
a lot of his solo records, I listened to all of them, kind of skimmed through a few of them, but
Yeah.
I did give at least one listen to each of his official solo album releases. Now, you'll get if you're out there and you're, where do I start with Denny Laine? You'll get very lost very easily if you go on to streaming, because many of his regular release albums aren't available streaming at all. Like Lane and Holidays and Anyone Can Fly. But you can find all of them on YouTube, obviously. But on streaming, it's just a bunch of re-recordings and collections, and it's like, is this an official thing or is this a thrown together thing just for streaming? It's very confusing. So
That's what I noticed too. I was
yeah,
looking on Spotify and I just kept seeing how many versions of Band on the Run
yeah, and Go
did he
Now
and
and
Go
yeah,
Now, the same things that he just keeps doing
yeah.
over and over.
Now he did do some official re-recordings
Yeah.
of some of his old stuff. He even did a Japanese Tears again, a
Hmm.
re-recording. He did a Wings at the Sound of Denny Lane, which is all Wings songs
Yeah, he did, like, I
re-recorded.
heard him singing silly love songs and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So there's some stuff out there to check into. I'll give you a, hey, listen to this one. Hey, shy
Okay.
away from these when we get to the solo albums. But I think the biggest thing I take from Denny Laine is just seemed to be a very nice guy, and always seemed to be willing to participate in Beatle Fests. They had a 97, I think, him and Juber and Steve Holly had a little Wings reunion at Beatles Fest in New Jersey, and then appeared again in 2014, 2017, 2018, 2019. So I saw some interviews with him late in his life when he's touring with the Denny Laine band, I think is what it was called.
Yeah.
And he just always seemed like so nice, so like willing to talk to fans and participate with, not somebody who's very precious about like, oh, I was in Wings,
Yeah.
I'm a
No,
big
no.
deal. He just would just be very like, very, very nice to interviewers, very nice to fans, very nice to people in general. So, and I think that started from way back in his early days, because I saw some interview and it really struck me. I was like, how did, because I was thinking, how did it get to the point where Paul McCartney would think of Denny Laine to be in Wings? And I think it came back from the Moody Blues days, when the Moody Blues were just starting. He and the early Moody Blues would have a lot of parties, I guess.
Yeah.
And so, because there's some interview where he's talking a lot about just, oh yeah, these guys would come over and they'd be, and we all get really drunk, and sometimes you're concerned about them going home and stuff because we're all drinking so much. So,
Yeah, a couple things you mentioned there, I think probably, well, if you look at the history, he's the only member of Wings besides Paul and Linda to be there the whole way through.
yeah,
And I think that we were talking about this before we started recording, but he's kind of the consummate sideman or the consummate not the out front guy, and he's just kind of like George Harrison would say, he'd like, or actually more Ringo would say, I like being in a band. I just like to play with people and have a good time. And I think that strikes me as a good way to look at Denny, because even though he did sing lead on some of those, some Wing songs, some Moody Blues songs, and had solo career, uh, he seems best when he's working at the side of Paul or in the Moody Blues. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
his guitar talents and his vocal talents are best melding with
yeah, exactly.
others. Not to say that when he does sing lead on, Go Now and a couple other tunes that he doesn't do a fantastic job on it, but when he has to carry the whole thing himself, just doesn't quite. And it's sort of like, who is Denny? Like, what is his talent?
Yeah, yeah.
It's sort of like not obvious,
No, it's a
you
little
know?
anonymous or kind of
Yeah,
faceless.
because
Yeah.
as a vocalist, he has a nice voice, a very pleasant voice, but it's not a strong
No.
voice, not a very extremely dynamic, can hit the although although in Japanese Tears he attempts to hit the high highs. Um, it's the range isn't crazy, and
No.
it's softer voice, kind of like a kind voice, kind of a
Kind of
nice,
a little
pleasant,
wispy.
yeah,
Yeah.
pleasant, wispy voice. And then I struggled throughout listening to all of his works to really find a distinct guitar sound or style.
Yeah.
He just seems to be a real good, solid, fill in the gaps rhythm guitarist, maybe a little solo here and there, but not. I mean, if you think about the Wing solos, you're thinking about My Love. You're thinking about other
Yeah. The
people.
McCullochs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You're not thinking about his guitar solos. So when you get to his solo works, often he completely doesn't even bother with the guitar, and it's a lot of keyboards, ill-advisedly, because gives the keyboard sounds to everybody else. Now he could play keyboards too, and he played a little keyboards actually on a couple of the Paul solo albums. We'll
Yeah.
get to that. We'll get to that as well. But
And Wings Over America, you can see him playing
yeah,
keyboards.
yeah.
Yeah.
He could play different instruments, and he could like I said, fill in the gaps
Yeah.
when needed. But I think as a distinct guitar sound guitarist, I don't ever see him showing up on top 100 guitarists or
Oh,
anything
no
like
way.
that. I think he's just a solid guitarist and not a virtuoso, you, you know,
No, no.
with a very, very, very distinct sound to him.
Right. And so let's go back to the Moody Blues here and kind
Yeah.
of run through the pre-Wings stuff. So as you mentioned, he was a founding member of the Moody Blues, but only for a brief time was he actually in the group.
Yeah. He plays on the first album and some singles. The first album, the Magnificent Moodies, which, by the way, if you go to your streaming and you go to the Magnificent Moodies, you're going to get the Magnificent Moodies, and you're also going to get all the solo singles from the era. So it's a one-stop shop. Don't need to go anywhere else for your Denny Laine, because he left the group right
Yeah.
afterwards. So
Yeah, obviously the song he's best known for is the one that he sang in all the Wings concerts, was "Go Now." And I
mhm.
found it interesting. I had maybe I'm a fool for not knowing this, but I didn't realize that that's a cover. That the Moody Blues didn't even write that song. And
Mm,
that's it's by Bessie Banks, who sang the song. So that was something unusual. They always say, "Oh, it's a Moody Blues song." Well, it's like saying "Twist and Shout" is a Beatles song. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, they made it famous, but
yeah,
they didn't write it or come up with it. So, but yeah, it's
yeah,
kind of that's a good song, and certainly stands out. It's got an interesting meter, kind of a waltz feel, a 6/8 feel,
yeah,
and yeah, I mean, he sings well.
yeah. And from then on, it would be associated with him.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, 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 yeah.
not even the Moody Blues, really.
No,
It's just him.
just Denny.
He sang it, so then he goes to Wings and he sings it live
Right.
all the time in Wings, and famously on Wings Over America.
Yeah.
So very good version there. That's probably the version for me.
Yeah.
There you can get a second version on that streaming. You can get a couple of the earliest take kind of version that maybe made it onto a single, and then the regular album version of that on the Magnificent Moody's. The rest of the Magnificent Moody's is okay. It's I think the Moody's at that time, it's the Moody Blues, and I think that they're trying to be just like when the Rolling Stones started or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to be a blues band. That they've got a James Brown song on here. They've got two James Brown songs. They've got some originals, some written by Laine and Mike Pender on it. It's a little it just feels like a band that's not quite formed yet. And then once Denny Laine leaves, obviously they became something quite different. A lot more sort of orchestral prog rock, very like I don't know. I don't really like the
Pompous.
regular Moody Blues very much, to be
No.
honest with you. Even though I said that I do own, I did pay for and own a box set of theirs, which is great. So for a band I don't even really like that much, but obviously they'd gone to big success with Nights in White Satin and Ride My Seesaw, which I hate that song. A couple other songs like that, and then Tuesday Afternoon, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
all that. So they turned it in more, I would say, syrupy direction after this original. I saw something that said with Laine and someone else who had left the band, I forget who, they had a little more edge.
Mm.
It was a little rougher sounding, a little rockier sounding.
Well, I would agree with the rough side of it. I thought the production was really poor on those early those early Moody Blues songs. Sounds real rough on the production, like very over modulating microphones and just muddy guitars and ugh.
Yeah. Well, they'd get better at their production. That's for
yes,
sure.
that's for sure. That's for sure.
All the orchestral flourishes and stuff. Not my cup of tea, but
no.
I realize we've already ticked off somebody out there who loves the Moody Blues so much.
I know.
Ride My Seesaw is their favorite song.
Well, I'll be interested to know if anyone's favorite band is the Electric String Band, because that's where Denny went next. And what do you know about them?
That's the other thing is I think it's like the Moody Blues. It was sort of at the time he was in it was sort of like a blues rock thing, and then this Electric String Band, which is like the next thing he's in, is like total flower powery sounding. Ask the People is their big song, and it just doesn't really kind of a strange. And they weren't around very long. They just played a few gigs and recorded a couple songs, and then they were done. And then he released a couple singles on his own as solo artist. Say You Don't Mind with Ask the People as a B-side, and Too Much in Love with Catherine Will in 68. So this is 67, 68. And they're sort of the era, not like I'd Say You Don't Mind, he would go on and play live and re-record it a dozen times, of course. Say You Don't Mind's a good song.
But it didn't go anywhere.
Didn't go anywhere. So then he tries to join a band. Oh, what a great name for a band. Dave's favorite name for a band ever.
Balls.
So
well, and this was interesting. I remember way back when we were doing our it's funny how our podcast topics and people intersect, because I remember when we were doing our super friend of the show, Jeff Lynne episode, we had a segment on The Move.
That's right.
At this time, Denny Laine and Trevor Burton who would later go on to The Move would be in Balls together. And just all these groups they almost sort of like switching hands all the time, or just like filling in here and there, and nothing couldn't stick.
Yeah, and the other thing, I guess Balls recorded a full album and then
Yeah.
never released it. So, and
Right.
it's never ever been released, I guess.
No.
I mean, I'm sure you can find it somehow. It's strange. It seems just like a lot of stops and start. Like here he is in the Moody Blues, which we all know the Moody Blues, but he quits and then he joins this electric string band, and then it doesn't happen, and then his singles don't go anywhere, and then Balls doesn't go anywhere.
I mean, hard to believe with a name like that they
Yeah.
weren't top of the charts.
So it seems like his career's been kind of a mess up to this point.
Yeah.
And so it's strange that the next thing he does is he joins a super group, but it's not the super group you're thinking. It's Ginger Baker's Air Force,
Right.
which I have the Ginger Baker's Air Force first record. It's Ginger Baker,
Steve
obviously.
Winwood. Well, it's
Yeah.
basically Blind Faith with all these other people from Traffic and
Yeah. And it's a different lineup in the first album and the second album, but Denny it takes lead on a couple of tracks on the first record, which is the one I have, Early in the Morning and Man of Constant Sorrow. Those are both traditionals, rearranged for the group, and I gotta say a pretty pleasant listen to both of those. And he did a good job of lead vocaling those two songs. Ginger Baker's Air Force, they just have those two records, which I guess they made the same year.
Yeah.
1970. And so what's next, Dave? Oh, here we go.
Here we go. Well, he joined.
Joins the Wings.
We're making our Wings signs here. 1971, he joins Wings, and as we said, remains with them for 10 years until they broke up. So, how did he meet Paul and Linda and get involved in Wings?
Well, if you go to the McCartney Legacy Volume 1, a very valuable, although the lack of an index, I would quibble about, but a very valuable resource here. If you go to page 278, you can get the whole, in a nutshell, kind of history of Denny Laine, including how Balls didn't work out. But I'll read you on page 280. Paul knew that Laine was currently not in a band and thought that the breadth of his musical experience, plus the fact that he was a decent guitarist with a strong voice and already a friend, made him an ideal prospect for the new band. What Paul did not know that was Laine was broke, homeless, and sleeping in the back room of this other guy's office, and he was trying to keep body and soul together with a Tin Pan Alley job, writing songs and recording demos in SX Musics in the hope that other artists would record them and earn him some royalties. He was writing a song when Paul telephoned. The phone goes. This is Denny talking. The phone goes, and as though he'd been seeing me every day for the past 10 years, he says, "Hi, man, what are you doing?" I said, "Who's that?" "Paul." "Paul who?" He went, "Paul, And then I sussed out who it was, and he says, "Well, what's happening?" And I said, "Oh, well, I've just, I've done this album Ram," as though he didn't know that I know that he'd done an album. I says, "Yeah, I've heard of it. Go on." Paul told Denny he was about to form a band, and he invited the studio players he had recorded with in New York, but that the only drummer wanted to do it had asked straight out, "You fancy doing something?" Basically, I was having trouble with my manager, Laine said, trying to make it again, but not really going out of my way, and I was not getting the results, the kind that I wanted. Anyway, Paul just happened to call me up. It was the weekend, and I just finished some of the mixes from the album. So when he called it, he just said, "Thank Christ for that. I have somebody to work with that I don't have to explain everything to." So that was the decider, really, just one of those things of fate.
Wow. So right place at the right time.
Yeah, exactly. So it worked out right when he desperately needed it. He was kind of homeless at the time.
Yeah.
He joins Wings and never looks back.
No.
Obviously they plays on all of the albums. Let's go through the albums just quickly. He doesn't, and just kind of talk about if he sings lead vocals on a couple of these tracks, has some co-writing credits on a few of them. So no leads on Wildlife, right?
No, nothing on the wildlife. That's all Paul and Linda.
Yeah. And then same with the final cut of Red Rose, but I Lie Around and I Would Only Smile, obviously those came out uh in the re-release here
Yeah,
in the last 10 years of the archive
the
series.
archive series. And
Yeah.
also I Lie Around was the B-side of Live and Let Die. So
That's right.
you
That's
would
right.
you would hear, although that's not a Lane song, Denny just sings. It's a
Yeah.
McCartney song, but Denny sings. I think that was the first song that had a member of Wings lead singing on.
It,
So that was kind of important.
and then Band on the Run, which we'll bring up Band on the Run at the end of the episode.
Yes,
Again,
yes.
Casso's last words and no words. He co-wrote that one as well. So
Yeah, so he started that one and then Paul came in to finish it up. And
yeah. Then on Venus and Mars, of course, you gotta have your Spirits of Ancient Egypt.
yeah,
One of your favorites.
oh yeah, there's some good whoa, oohs on there. Yeah, another, I believe I don't know if I think that's a McCartney song again that Denny
Mm-hmm.
sings on. But that one actually works really well. I think we talked about it during the Wings Over America. A lot of those songs did much better when they were performed live, and that was a pretty good one in concert, actually, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of in concert, Time to
Oh,
Hide
oh
from
yeah.
Infinite Speed of Sound, he nails that one in concert, real
Yeah.
feature piece. And then a song I really like his vocals on, which is The Note You Never Wrote. I think that's probably one of my favorites of that he sings.
Yes.
Although
Yeah.
again, I think is that a Paul written?
That's a McCartney song,
And then obviously in Wings of Over America, he does Go Now
yeah.
and Time to Hide on that.
And he sings Richard Cory, which is a Paul Simon song that he insisted that they cover.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of Richard Cory? Is it your
Uh,
favorite Wings
n-
thing?
no, I like the Simon and Garfunkel version. That's a nice folksy song, but
Mm-hmm.
it's most known on the Wings Over America album for him inserting John Denver's name in there at the end.
London Town. He's all over London Town.
Yeah.
Co-writing London Town, co-writing Don't Let It Bring You Down, and then also writing and also singing on Children. Kind of a forgettable song for
Yeah.
children overall, but Deliver Your Children probably a little better known with that riff, that
Yeah, yeah.
so we haven't talked much London Town because we've been waiting.
Well, because we're still enjoying our 1993 remastered copy.
Yeah, you want to get the good out of the 1993 remastered copy.
Yeah.
But now yawn 31 years later.
Yeah. Still on that one.
Insane.
Yeah.
And then of course the biggest selling song of all time.
Oh yeah.
Just so happens that he co-wrote the biggest selling song of all time, Mull of Kintyre.
Right.
Have
Yeah,
we talked much about Mull of Kintyre? I think a little bit on the 7-inch singles.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we talked about it a little bit. We haven't done an actual analysis of the song because it's not on an album. So, but yeah, I think that the royalties off of that song probably allowed him to live and retire from Wings very comfortably.
Yeah,
because that was right until the end of his life, which is sort of sad, as we'll wrap up with. The last couple months were quite sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really, Mull of Kintyre was huge. And then the final Wings album, he was also pretty involved in Back to the Egg.
We really don't want to talk about the final Wings album, do we? No,
no, we don't.
No, we will. We will. He was, he's obviously very involved in that, and of course, the song Again and Again and Again.
Yeah,
is the big highlight feature, and I think he would play that many times live in his career through the rest of his days. So, but overall, he was with the group the whole time, and not just that, but before we get to his solo stuff, just wanted to mention he's all over Tug of War and Pipes of Peace.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's almost like he's stuck with Paul a little longer.
yeah,
And he is, I think he's credited on every song on Pipes of Peace and then on many songs on Tug of War.
yeah,
Um,
because a lot of those songs were supposed to be Wings songs, and then Paul
yeah,
had his misfortune in Japan
yeah,
and eventually disbanded Wings, and it sort of fell apart. But yeah, there are a lot of bootlegs, and some of those songs came out on the archive sets for Pipes
yeah,
of Peace and Tug of War. But yeah,
yeah,
they were Denny Laine was on a lot of those tunes, so it was like you say, kind of he wasn't done with Paul yet.
yeah. It seems like after that they drifted apart. I don't think there
Yeah,
was ever any kind of like, man, screw Denny Laine, or you know what, I'm sick of Paul McCartney or anything
yeah,
like that. Any kind of big negativity. At least they were gentlemanly enough that if there was, they didn't talk about it.
right, exactly.
But there's nothing else other than one random tune, I think, that where he plays with Paul. Now he does play on All Those Years Ago,
Right, right.
and then all of them play, of course, on McGear.
Yeah,
Eventually we'll talk about McGear.
yeah.
And you know, and then there's some participation he has on Wide Prairie when Wide Prairie comes out
For Linda.
for Linda. And you know, and then he guest appears on some other minor things, Steve Holly's album and some other
Yeah.
things.
Summing up his contributions to Wings. So, we've got the consummate sideman, a couple of songs, a couple of co-writes. What do you attribute his longevity? Because, you were talking before the podcast about how all these people came in and out of the group. There were so many lineup changes, yet he stayed. So he must have been a good hang.
Yeah,
Do you think,
affability.
yeah, affability. And do you think Paul found him not threatening in a way? So he was sort of like a steady hand, but not somebody who would challenge or
Yeah,
yeah.
that's interesting. You mentioned that because I've been reading the Anthony DeCurtis book on Lou Reed,
Hmm.
and just read about how, you know, Lou basically wanted John Cale out of the group because John Cale was sort of his equal.
Oh
He
yeah.
replaced John Cale with young Doug Yule,
Right.
who was definitely not his equal, and he could like make do whatever he wanted to do.
Hmm.
And then it kind of backfired because the manager of the group started to favor Doug Yule because Lou Reed was too difficult to deal with. So it's like, let's just make this Doug Yule's group. That'd be a lot better for me.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
but yeah, there could be something to that. But I just think if you've got somebody and they're very affable and they're happy to take the lead if need be, but they're not really pushy and pushing for like, give me more songs or being real
Demanding to
demanding or
more
anything like that.
spotlight. Yeah.
And he had shown that he could work with other groups and
Right.
Balls and all these other groups, mega groups like
Yeah.
Balls. That I think he was just, you know, but I think his main greatest contribution to Wings, same with Linda, are the backup
Yeah.
vocals on all of the songs.
Yeah,
Have a
because you can
distinct mix between Denny Laine and Linda McCartney's voices that is not to be found anywhere else quite so well, and consistent throughout all of their work. Is wonderful, and in many places is just fantastic. Silly love songs,
that's the thing I was just
you
gonna
know.
say. Think of, yeah, that song you hear Denny taking the lead on the background on the then when they have the different parts, and then Linda, and
Yeah,
it's a great blend, the three of them together.
yeah. Don't let it bring you down.
Yeah.
You know, like you just think of many songs I could just list, and you just immediately can hear the backup vocals being
Yep.
yeah, amazing. So I think that that's his number one greatest thing is making all these Wings albums are good albums.
Yes.
And a lot of the reason that they're good albums is because the vocal harmony stuff works real well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's a
Yeah.
good way to sum him up. So
As a guitarist, like I said, is sort of nondescript.
yeah, definitely.
A fair, capable guitarist, sure, but nothing where you're like, what is this? It's way out of tune
Right.
or
No,
anything like that. Now,
now here's the tough part. So now we've got to
yeah,
get to all these solo
yeah.
albums.
So I'll just kind of rip through them. I'll make some comments. A few of these comments are going to be slightly negative about them, but that's because they're not. A lot of these are not great albums. I've heard some people say, "Oh, all of these solo albums, so great," but there was one commenter that I think had it perfectly, which was his solo work in general has a lot of potential, but is like ruined with terrible production issues.
Mm.
So that's not the case on all these, though. So his first solo album is called Ah Lane. And it's not bad. It's a little hit and miss. He's wearing a Wings shirt on the cover, but there's no help from Wings people on this one. A couple of the weirder titles of this, there's one song called Don't Try, You'll Be Refused, and another song
Okay.
called Sons of Elton Haven Brown. So kind of a weird album, kind of a strange album. I'm not sure what they were going for in the release of the album. And then 1977. This one is probably the one that uh Wings fans will definitely want to at least give a listen to. And why? Because Paul and Linda are both on it. But it's called Holidays. And if you remember, around that time ish, Paul and his production company bought rights to all the Buddy Holly catalog. So this is 100% Buddy Holly covers, and it was recorded at Rude Studios. So it's sort of got that fun sort of 4-track, Paul playing a lot of it, and you can definitely hear him on the backup vocals. So it's not too bad, and it's probably, of all these things we list here, the one to go seek out and actually take a listen to.
So I'd never really listened to it until now, and it's kind of a weird album because it's first of all extremely short. I don't even
Yeah,
think it runs a half hour.
no,
It's very short and rough in a weird way. Like there,
yeah,
I think two songs where they just forget the lyrics and start over, or they kind of like hard to get going out of the gate, like they were sharing some substances or something and just having a good time hanging around singing
yeah,
songs. Well, they were at Paul's studio, so in his house.
yeah,
So yeah, I can understand. But yeah, I mean, there's some nice stuff on it and some tunes you'll know, like It's So Easy and Rave On and a lot of, if you like Buddy Holly, Look at Me, some good Buddy Holly tunes. So it's interesting to hear their take on it.
yeah. Then there comes this album called Japanese Tears.
Yeah, that's
And
kind
the
of an infamous one.
origin of the song Japanese Tears is it's written from the perspective of a fan who was heartbroken when the Wings tour was canceled in Japan, and that we would never be able to play in Japan as Wings. But it's sort of like an odds and sods type album, referring to the Who album. That's sort of
Yeah.
like just like some stuff that were B-sides and unreleased tracks. It sort of just feels like a thrown together kind of like. So there's some Wings participation on it, like I Could Only Smile is on this,
Yeah.
but it's a really weird album. There's
Especially
his
the title song is
his
real kind of
yeah, it really
stare.
doesn't age well. And
Thank you for saying that.
his wife JoJo sings one of the tracks. Is short. I think they were only married for like whenever they were recording this album too.
Yeah.
Just very strange kind of threw it together. So kind of a strange album there. So and so you've got three. He's released 3 albums, and only one of them you could say is like a real album. I mean, one of them is a covers album. Another one's a throw together whatever I've got in the closet album. So at least Anyone Can Fly 1982, which is his first real solo album, is a real album with us, and it's a solid effort. The guitar solos work certainly more focused than some of his stuff up to then, and it was actually produced by Hurricane Smith,
Oh,
who was
yeah.
an engineer for some of the Beatles albums, so
Yeah.
and the early Pink Floyd albums.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but there's a very weird song on it called "Various Shapes and Forms." Not bad, not bad. Now, Hometown Girls, 1985. Wings on My Feet, 1987. Lonely Road, 1988. And All I Want Is Freedom, 1990. I have the same note for all of them. Weak overall because of these terrible keyboards. And Wings on My Feet has Rick Wakeman even playing
Oh, wow.
keyboards, and which you'd think would make the keyboards better, but they don't. They just sound so. I mean, we say 80s production and we make fun of the Lou Reed bass sound. We make fun of the not real drum sound.
Yeah.
It is so prevalent on these albums. And he plays scant little guitar. Whenever he plays guitar on it, it's like, oh, there's some guitar. Because you're just and so whether or not the songs are good on these albums, they're kind of like wrecked by the production. And there's like Wildest Dream on All I Want is a good song. There's a couple good songs in those four albums, but it's just If I Tried from Lonely Road, that's a good song. But pretty weak. Pretty weak, and it's all because of the keyboards, and then he doesn't have the vocal chops to like overcome the production. So it just kind of like all four of these back to back to back to back, all recorded between 85 and 90 are kind of poor. Now, stuck in the middle of that is something called Master Suite from 1988, which is an instrumental all guitar. So it's certainly a better listen than those other four. And sometimes people are like, don't say 80s production was fine, and don't blame everything on 80s production. But here I think you really can say, man, if they just could have recorded these like songs properly.
Yeah.
With good sounding. I mean, it sounds really, some of the keyboarding and stuff is amateurish sounding. It's like they got a Casio keyboard and found went to number 2 or something, and then recorded the whole album that way. It's just like, it's really awful, really crazy. So those are rough listens. And the Hometown Girls cover is pretty funny because it's like a bunch of girls in total 80s hair.
Oh my God, look at that. Yeah.
and they're staring over at Denny, and Denny's like kind of ignoring him and taking a phone call, and he's holding like the weirdest guitar I've ever seen.
Yeah,
which is odd because he doesn't even play guitar barely. So it's really, there is one lyric from the song Cruisin' from Hometown Girls, and the lyric says, "I want to see you twisted like an eel."
Ooh, okay.
Really, really clunky lyrics.
So, yeah.
And then he had a couple more records. Reborn in 96, much better songs on that one. But sometimes a few of them still drugged down by the production. But Fanfare and In Time are both good songs on that one. And then he re-recorded a bunch of Wings songs for 1996 album Wings at the Sound of Denny Laine. Which is a funny title.
Yeah.
Mullen Can Tire, Time to Hide, Listen to What the Man Says, and Silly Love Songs, and a few of those. So not bad, but none of them are better than the original.
No, like why? You wonder why, especially for the songs that aren't even his. Sort of like,
I think it's just to make a fan's buck.
Yeah, exactly.
That one. So, but and then The Blue Musician in 08. So I kind of and it's very similar to Master Suite, and it's all instrumental, all guitar album, and again much better. So if I had recommendations, it would be take a listen to Holly Days.
Just for the Paul and Linda
for the
assistance.
Paul and Linda of it.
Yeah.
Listen to the first song on Japanese Tears just for it's weird. It's very weird. And then I really kind of do like Master Suite and the Blue Musician.
Hmm.
So it's pretty good. Now there's a dozen, like I said, there's a dozen more re-recorded,
Yeah.
versions of his stuff. Blue Nights, Rock Survivor, The Masters, Blue Wings, The Ultimate Collection. It's like all these
Yeah.
different, like, thrown together kind of like great compilations, and I'm not even sure. And then it seems like he re-recorded some of his albums, which happens a lot these days, where an artist, the most famous one being your favorite, being from Kansas City, Taylor Swift,
Oh, yeah.
re-records her full album so that she can get the correct amount of money from these
Mm.
recordings instead of it all going to some scumbag
Yeah. Yeah.
that messed up the pay deals.
Right.
I heard Denny talking about how, oh, now that there's the internet, you can directly interact with the fans, and you can record something and put it on the internet and sell it directly to the fan, and you can actually make a little bit of money instead of it all going to the pockets of some big corporation or something, or
Right.
even small. I mean, most of these albums were released on small labels like President, Magnum Force,
Yeah. I've never even heard of these labels.
Peacock Records.
Yeah. And then to kind of wrap up the story with him, that you said his last real album was 2008, I think, or
Yeah,
somewhere. Yeah. So then, really, in the next 10 years or so, went on these nostalgia tours and went to the fan conventions and kind of was the nice guy at a lot of these places. And sadly, he had COVID in 2022 and then had a bunch of surgeries for lung
yeah,
issues, a collapsed lung, and then there was even, and you had sent me right about, I don't know, just a few days, a week before he died, there was a GoFundMe page because we suddenly heard that he had no health insurance, which I found very odd.
yeah,
And they had a concert, a benefit concert in California in Hollywood,
yeah.
just the 27th, and
A
then
lot
on
of
the
great,
yeah,
people playing on that, and
yeah,
and I we had a video of there's a somewhere on YouTube is a video of the whole concert, so you can watch.
yes,
It's sort of a fan filmed
yeah,
video of it, but you can watch the whole thing, and there's a lot of great people on it,
yep,
and
yeah.
the
I think
actual
Denny
list of
Sywell was there,
yeah,
and
Denny Sywell, yes.
yeah, some other people he
Oh,
played with. So
yeah,
yeah, and then just on a few days later, on December 5th, he died of lung disease at 79. So,
yeah,
and he'd only been married to his second wife since July of last year, so just a few months.
yeah,
So kind of a sad ending to the story, and there were lots of tributes, and Paul had a nice uh, long tribute comment to him, and uh, overall, an interesting career. I want to say, in some ways, he was in the right place at the right time for some things, and then had some
yeah,
really bad instincts, or seemed to not be in the right
yeah.
place for
Like, let me
others.
leave the Moody Blues
Yeah,
before they make it big.
right,
Let me
right.
spend a lot of time recording balls, and then it does nothing. Probably partially because of the stupid name of the group,
Yeah,
but Wings, he certainly saw Wings, the opportunity it was,
yeah.
and jumped on board, and it wasn't easy
No, no.
at the beginning, where they're getting bad reviews and playing this university tour that not, but they certainly got huge.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And his
Yeah,
profile certainly raised a lot.
yeah.
So
So, yeah, and his solo work, it's very touch and go,
yeah.
mostly go now.
Go
But
now.
there's
Yeah.
some hidden gems in there, and certainly, like, some of the records were enjoyable listens.
Yeah.
A lot of them weren't, but it wasn't Denny Laine's fault that they weren't. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was sort of like, yeah, like that fan said. This fan was like, "Man, I wish we could just go re-record all these albums
Right.
for you. Like, take your vocals, take whatever parts you played on them, keep those, and then just re-record the whole rest of it, because it's very, like, some of them,
Oof.
keyboards and stuff.
Bad.
Certainly, I mean, if we're talking about Beatle friends, the other just thing, just in general, Beatle friends, what better friend to Paul McCartney as
Oh
far as
yeah.
like Paul resuscitating his own career to be able to get Wings together and keep them together. If Denny Laine had quit around when everybody else quit, right before Band on the Run, it would just be like, all right, well, I guess I'm the solo artist now.
Yeah, right, right.
And instead it Wings stayed together. Wings got stronger. Were Wings over Europe and America. You know, we're still going pretty strong. When they broke up, it wasn't because of that they weren't like playing well
No,
or
no.
anything like that.
There's our tribute to Denny Laine and a true Beatle friend, certainly to Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
And so before we wrap up, you mentioned you wanted to say something about Band on the Run here, which will be coming out in the underdubbed mixes and the half-speed master in just a couple of weeks now. We're recording on January 21st, so will be coming
Yeah.
out soon.
So yeah, so they have announced 50th sort of once again, not on the right year, but 50th anniversary. So they're doing, you can get the half speed master, which is available to purchase on Amazon. But then there's a 2-disc version, which is only available through the Paul McCartney website, which is running you $50, but 50 if you divide, that's $25 a record. But you've got the Band on the Run and you've got the underdubbed mix, but it'll be shipping on the 2nd of February, and I bought it.
Oh, you
If I
did.
broke down, I bought
You
it.
broke down. Well,
So it's coming.
and we'll get the full review when Chris
Yeah.
gets his copy. But I did see on Friday, yesterday or a couple days ago, that they released a video of Mammunia to
Uh-huh.
commemorate like a new
Yep.
kind of animated version of Mammunia. So the publicity is starting to appear for that. And there was a kind of disgruntled YouTube fan who said, I can't believe this is the 7th time I have to buy this album.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she was really irritated at all
Well,
these reissues.
well, I'll just say the half speed master, I bought the RAM half speed master and I like it a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Or no, I'm sorry,
Oh,
I bought the McCartney half speed master.
I got the RAM one.
You got the RAM one, and we both like our half
Yeah.
speed masters. So I really was like, okay, whenever the Band on the Run half speed master comes out, because I've got an old kind of crappy copy of it, I was definitely going to get it. So I kind of like the additional. Okay, you get the half speed master, and you get a second disc. You might not listen to it as much, but it is at least something you haven't heard.
True,
Which is
true.
a new mix of, not a new mix, but a different mix
Yeah.
of this. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think surely we will finally do we've never done a full review of Band on the Run.
No, we've just been hit or miss songs, the singles, and we've, way back we talked about a little bit, but not in any kind of detail. So
yeah,
I think we'll be excited to get into it, which should be upcoming since the albums will be released in early February, right before the 60th anniversary of the Beatles coming to America. So lots of stuff going on in the next few weeks in the Beatle world. So we will be with you every step of the way.
That's right.
So thanks as always for listening. And if you have any comments, I mentioned on our Facebook page, but you can, at the end of each show, we're going to do kind of a audience mailbag or sort of a reader or listener responses. So if you have anything, any response you'd like to share with us, you can email me at I've got a Beatles podcast at hotmail.com, and we will take a look through them. Or you can also leave a voice message if you like. That's always fun. And we can play your voice and then respond.
How do they do that? That the instructions are on the Facebook?
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is to either record on your phone with voice memos, or you can use a free program, Vocaroo, Vocaroo
Yeah.
.com, which is extremely easy, and you can just send the link, and we'll look forward to hearing your responses. You can start right away with this episode and let us know your thoughts on Denny Laine, the consummate friend of Paul McCartney. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, thanks as always for listening, and we'll be back at you soon with a new episode.